Welcome friends, in this video we're going to make use of the stored procedure we made in the last one. So begin by cranking up a project of the kind we've done before and then drag and drop a grid view in, just as you see it here. And where do we go from here? Well, we want to do some different things. For example, we're going to have a little interface where you can select the order ID and then you can display that information, that summarized information in the web page. How can we go about this? Well, remember, we have the get orders summary stored procedure, so we need to be able to call that as a first step. How do we get the order IDs? Well, take a look. And again, this reflects, as you can imagine, a good degree of experimentation. We still have to do that no matter what. So I'm going to type on the left side into the toolbox search box. I will say, for example, drop-down list. Okay, so drag a drop-down in and just drop it into the page. Now, when you look at this, it says choose data source. What is a drop-down? It's just a place where you click and it expands a set of choices you can choose from. So we are going to apply it here as follows. First of all, under the tasks for this item, make sure you enable auto postback. So we can go to the server and refresh everything. And then you see where it says choose data source? All right, so imagine we don't know what to do. We're clicking around. We see choose data source. We know that the grid view has a choose data source. We've done that one. So very likely, because it says the same thing, it probably functions in a similar way. So let's just click it. And it brings us here. And this panel is different from the ones we've seen before. So we just continue to click. Oh, and it says new data source. Well, think about the grid view. Something similar happens. Then we get to a screen just like this one. We've used this before. So select SQL database and then just click OK. Now, before we do that, though, I want to rename these because we'll have two connections just to show you that you can. I'm going to rename this one so its purpose is more clear. I'm going to say SQL and I will say, for example, orders list. So we understand this connection will be used to display the list of orders in our table. Click OK. Click new connection. These are all the usual steps, nothing new. So this exercise is showing so far is a drop-down can be connected to a database. All right, put a slash, and then we'll say here SQL Express. And down below, select the database. Remember, we'll use AdventureWorks. Remember, we have sales order detail, that table inside it. We can make use of it. Click OK. Here is the connection string. Nothing new. We've seen that before. Click Next. You can leave that. Click Next. Give it a second. Sometimes the stage can take a little bit. All right, so from this stage here, click on where it says specify a custom SQL statement or stored procedure, and then click Next. So in this panel, define custom statements or stored procedures. I'm going to type a small amount of code. I'm going to say select distinct. I just want to get non-repeating ones, right? I just want the unique order IDs out of the table there. So select distinct and then sales order ID from sales order detail. Remember, that dropdown will simply show you the list of available order IDs. There's no reason why they should repeat, but they do repeat in the original data. Keep that in mind, right? In blocks. So here we don't need them to repeat. We just want to see them one time. That's it. All right, click Next. Give this a test. Make sure it takes. Okay, so here we have our sales order ID column. Again. All right, click Finish. And at the next stage, it says select the data field to display in the drop-down list. Sales order ID, that's good. The other one you can leave as it is also, not important. Click OK. And what we have now is a drop-down connected to a data source. And it's connected to it through this SQL orders list connection. So that's the first stage in the process. The next stage now, and I imagine this could be done obviously in other ways. I'll show you a way. I'm going to add one more connection, another SQL data source. I'm going to click on configure data source. this time. And what will be the purpose of this one? This one is going to call the stored procedure we created previously. So first of all, click new connection. Give it a second here to take. And these steps are the usual ones, nothing new. But the only difference is I want to show you how to call a stored procedure from your application. So Windows authentication is good. Down below, select the usual database. AdventureWorks this time. Click OK. Give it a second here. I should refresh. It looks like this. Good. Click Next. You can leave that if you like. Click Next. And from this stage here, again, click on Specify a custom SQL statement or stored procedure. Click Next down below. And you see on the bottom, look carefully, it says Stored Procedure. You can select the stored procedure you want to call. So a lot of these obviously are there in the database by default because the people at Microsoft created them and put them together into AdventureWorks. But this one here, Get Order Summary, is ours. So click Next. All right, take a look here. So you've got the sales order ID. That's the parameter. Over here for the parameter source, you can expand that list. And you've got some options here. You can leave it as none. Just click Next and click Finish at the end. Okay? And I'm going to show you one more thing about these objects called connections. So highlight one of them, say the one that says SQL Data Source 1, right-click on it, and then go to its properties, and it should bring up a properties panel. And when you go through this, there's a lot of information. So what is relevant, take a look. You see on the bottom it says select command type equals stored procedure. You want to see that. That's good. Over here for the connection string, hover your mouse over it. It tells you what the connection string is, how it's connected to your server. Good. And for the ID, let's change that. I'm going to say here SQL and then orders summary. So I understand the purpose of this connection. SQL orders summary. All right. And let's see here. And after that, let's close this. So just click off it. It goes away. More space. Good. And how do we combine all of this now? Well, first of all, the grid view here has to be connected to the SQL orders summary. So under the choose data source, under its grid view tasks, expand that and make sure you select SQL orders summary. So SQL orders summary, not SQL orders list. And at the next stage, if you just run this, hit Google Chrome, give it some time to compile, connect. Keep in mind that for the dropdown, even when you select distinct records, the number of IDs is still pretty big. Okay, keep that in mind. It's still a pretty big list. But the beautiful part is that at least now you can take a dropdown and you can populate it using a column in your table. So again, remember, I typed distinct when I did that because I need to have them appear only one time. There's no reason why they should appear 10 times when they repeat. That doesn't help me. In this stage here, it might be a bit slow. Remember, there's a huge amount of information happening here behind the scenes. All right, and at some point, you should see a screen similar to this one. It might even keep spinning until it stops. First of all, let me just enlarge the view. So Control plus in Chrome to enlarge the view. Those are the basic things. Give it a second here. And we have this drop down. And remember, that's a big list of order IDs. So now when we switch that value over here, and this might be a little bit slow because remember, it's a big number of records still, even when they're distinct. When we switch this quantity, we should be able to call the get orders procedure on different order IDs. So for example, I should be able to summarize order 43662 when I switch the value to it in the dropdown. That's the goal here. Keep that in mind. So because that is so, I'm going to close this page and we'll continue. Close that. And now you're going to left double click on the data bound control. Data bound simply means it's connected, of course, to a data source like a table. So double click on the drop down and it brings up some default code behind the scenes. We get this basic code stub. And now comes the part of connecting everything together. What I mean by that is when I switch the order ID displayed in the dropdown, I should retrieve information as a result of that switch from the table on that particular order. So as an example, how do we go about this? Well, first of all, where do I begin? I'm going to begin with the connection. I'm going to type SQL. I'm going to type orders summary. Remember, this one is the one that connects to the database stored procedure. So I begin with that. And then what do I do after that? Well, think back to that procedure. It had a parameter. We have to be able to set its value to choose a particular list. So to do that, I'm going to type this. I'm going to type dot. And I'm going to type select parameters. And take a look at the big tooltip that shows. It says, guess the parameters collection that contains the parameters that are used by the data source. Select command property from the SQL source view object that is associated with the SQL data control. So the point is that we have a collection of parameters. We can choose it from here and then we can set its value so it can be passed into the database and we can extract information about a particular order. That's what all of this is saying in simple English. Remember, it says here parameters collection because besides having one parameter, you could have 10, correct? So I'm going to select this next. And then what do we do after that? Well, remember this here is a collection. Collections can be used this way. You can type a square bracket, and as soon as you do that, it brings up a new tip. So look through that tip. It says, guess or sets the parameter object at the specified index in the collection. Okay. And then the next one says, guess or sets the parameter object with a specified name in the collection. Okay, so you have a collection of parameters, and these are named quantities for this version of what you see on the screen. They're named. You can specify a string. That means sequence of characters between double quotes. So where do I get this quantity I'm about to enter? Well, think back about the way we designed the stored procedure. We had the sales order ID. So I'm going to type here between double quotes, sales order ID. That was our parameter. Now we can make use of it here. So we've got this SQL data source connection, and it's got a collection of objects called parameters. And you can hone in on one of them using square brackets and then the name of it between double quotes. And why do I want to do that? Because remember, we want to be able to call the stored procedure with a value read from the drop-down list. So to do that, I'm going to type dot default value. And where am I going to get this? Well, I'm going to get it from the list. So as an example, I'm going to type like that. I'm going to put the equals over here, the assignment operator in this context. And then I'm going to type drop-down list 1 dot selected value. And then terminate that with a semicolon to complete the statement. And remember, because this is contained in selected index changed, right, this will change as you run your program. Whenever you select a new quantity in the drop-down list, that new value will be passed into the stored procedure, and the stored procedure will be run again, and the grid view will be updated according to that. Remember, the grid view is connected to the summary. See that? And that itself is powered by the stored procedure. So everything works nicely. Switch order ID. So you read that value, pass it into the stored procedure. The stored procedure operates. The result is the grid view gets updated and you see updated information. All right, so let's give this a go. Hit Google Chrome, let it load. Okay, you've got the order ID up here in the list. And I wanted to show an example with a big table so you can see some of the issues that can happen. All right, if you click on this now, okay, select, say, this order 43661. Give this a second to run here. And as soon as you do that, take a look. It shows this information for it. You see that? That confirms the stored procedure has been called. And then you can repeat that for the values. All right, choose a different order, for example, and then just call it again, and so on. Just click on it, choose a different order. You want to confirm at least, 2 times that this is actually doing what it's supposed to do. You want to confirm that it's doing what it's supposed to do, and as you can see, it updates the grid view with the new information for the new order. Max, min, total, sales order. So it confirms everything is working as expected. Close this. And as you can imagine, if you switch over to source view, I don't want to dwell on this code too much. There's a lot of it here, as you can see. But at this point, if you read through it carefully, I think you will understand most of it. You've got some bound fields, grid view business, nothing new. All right, we've got this drop down right here. This is the only part that is new. And notice something. And notice something that over here says on selected index changed equals drop down list 1 underscore selected index changed. What is that? What are we connecting to with that line? Take a look. Keep that in mind, and then go back to default.aspx.cs, and you've got drop down list 1 underscore selected index changed. That's how you connect the interface and this markup language that you see here that kind of resembles HTML. And this is how you connect it to C# right here. That's the connection between the two. Which tells me what exactly? That if I remove this, it probably will not work anymore, correct? The connection between the two pieces, between the markup that you see and C#, the connection between the two will be broken. Now take a look at the SQL data source. You've got the select command equal to get order summary, stored procedure. Select command type is even specified, stored procedure. You see that? And then lastly, it says here select parameters. So you've got the parameter name equals select order ID, correct? Type is integer 32, correct. Remember in our database table, I'm going to open it up for a second. If you look inside here, AdventureWorks, tables, scroll down to sales order detail. Where is that? Over here. And you look at the sales order ID, it says INT. Data type is integer. So when it's brought into this context, it's now called integer 32, but roughly speaking, it's about the same thing. This is also why, remember, in C# we can type SQL order summary dot selected parameters and then the name of the parameter. And we can define its default value. It's right here. You see that? We can set it right there. Okay, friends, I'm going to leave it here. Thank you so much. I think this example, again, is interesting and practical. And I'll see you in the next one.